Welcome to the ProEconomy podcast, where we discuss water quality with industry experts. So please check us out at www.proeconomy.com, where you can find out more about our Orca copper and silver ionization system for the control of disease-causing bacteria such as Legionella and Pseudomonas. If water hygiene is an issue, then please reach out. We hope you enjoy.
Good morning, it's the ProEconomy podcast, and we'd like to welcome Nick Barsby from Adey in to come and talk to us today about water sampling. So, good morning, Nick. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Certainly, Sonia. Morning, everybody. So my name's Nick Barsby. A few of you may well have heard of me. Most prominently, I sit on the Legionella Control Association as an independent committee member. I've worked in the industry for over 10 years now, working at numerous laboratories, including at SOVA, AL Control and ALS, as well as currently at Adey.
Brilliant. So you've obviously had quite a few years industry experience. So how have you seen things changing maybe in the last 10 years in terms of water sampling?
Yes, so there's been an awful lot of change in the regulations, is the biggest change that I think we've seen over the last 10 years, Sonia. The market's definitely got a lot more data hungry. People want to know more information as quick as possible, as soon as possible and instantly. Obviously, recently we've seen the updates to HSG 274 and the amendment to ACOP L8. We've also seen the addition of HSG 282 for the SPA pools, not forgetting other developments such as HTMO 401, with the big addendum to now include the Pseudomonas testing, which has been very significant for the laboratories. Lots more samples coming in and lots more work for people like yourself.
So could you perhaps going back to basics, could you run through the sampling methods available to people out there?
Yes, certainly, Sonia. So the main method that the laboratories use is the ISO 11731, which is referred to as the gold standard, the culture method. With this method, we take 1 litre of sample, less can be provided. This is filtered, and then we end up with a very small 10ml diluent of sample where the membrane's placed. This is sonicated, and then we take a small amount of that sample and put it on 3 separate plates. We have an acid-treated, a heat-treated, and an untreated plate. The plate is then incubated for 10 days. It's read at a couple of occasions on that, normally days 3 or 4 and days 7 or 8, where presumptive samples are identified. A confirmation method takes place. I'll come on to those later. And then you end up with your positive final result after 12 days, or if it's a negative sample, after 10 calendar days. That's a traditional method that most people will be aware of. Other methods available include PCR, where we report the results as genomic units. These can't be compared to colony-forming units, CFUs. It's important to point that out. But it does give you an instant identification of the colony counts and the genomic units there. The other method that's used for identifying bacteria in water samples tends to be dip slides. These are a very good marker. They allow you to trend for data, but they don't give you exact counts, so you can't be as thorough with those. In my experience, people tend to use a lot of dip slides for routine monitoring. When bacterial counts start to increase, they then refer back to the gold standard of undertaking UKAS accredited testing.
Okay, brilliant. So moving forward, you mentioned rapid testing. I mean, obviously that's quite topical at the moment. Yeah. It would be fantastic if every result would be kind of achieved within 2 days. But I understand there's some kind of some problems with that potentially?
Yes, there's some pitfalls. So PCR, although it's a fantastic method, and it will be the way the market ends up in the fullness of time, the importance being the fullness of time there. That sort of testing, it's fantastic at giving you that sort of 8-hour, 12-hour result. But what you do find is that the sample can detect viable but non-culturable organisms. So these are bacteria that will be present on a PCR DNA scan, but you wouldn't be able to grow them using the traditional culture method, the gold standard. PCR can also identify some of the dead DNA. It can't differentiate in a lot of methods, so I think there are some developments required. Where we're seeing the biggest growth and the biggest increase at the moment is the Molotov confirmations, which takes the gold standard of your traditional filtration method, but it brings that confirmation down to minutes rather than 2 days. So with Molotov, you do not have any issues with VBNC, the viable but non-culturable, because the bacteria has to be present. And if the DNA isn't there to be replicated or the protein structure isn't there to grow, then you can't use Molotov to confirm it. So it is a good method.
Brilliant. So obviously with the rapid testing, there's going to be a cost implication. So I mean, what kind of costing would people be expected to pay?
Yeah, certainly. So as an example, a routine culture test will cost somewhere in the region of between 10, 15, maybe £20, depending on the volume of samples that you're submitting. There is no additional charge from most laboratories for mould and soft conformations. It's actually a quicker and more efficient method for the labs to undertake, so I wouldn't expect to pay a premium for that. With PCR, though, the cost of that testing, you're looking somewhere between £150, maybe £200 per sample. So it's a significant increase there in costs. It's probably tenfold.
And do you think that's the more widely it becomes used, the prices will come down, do you think?
I would expect it to, yes. It's very much an economies of scale at the moment with PCR. It's not used very commonly. As I said, I've worked for numerous big laboratories around the UK. Probably less than 1% of samples are analysed using PCR. And when we're talking 20,000 samples a week, it's clear to see why it isn't used.
Okay.
The prices are high.
Good stuff. So, I mean, in terms of yourselves as a laboratory, I mean, do you, obviously with the legislation changing and things in various different markets, do you see the volume of samples being submitted for testing to yourselves increasing in markets other than the healthcare market?
Yes, definitely. It's an increasing market, and I think more people are becoming more aware of the regulations. There was an outbreak very recently up in Newcastle, which has been through the court process. That's now been published, so I don't think I'm liable for that one. That's brought people's attentions, and as a laboratory, whenever we see a case that makes headlines, such as the one in Newcastle, we do see a spike in the number of samples that are taken. It seems to focus the mind of the external market, is what I would say. But more generally, we do see a lot more samples coming in. The closed system market is increasing significantly. The routine just monitoring of commercial premises is increasing significantly as well. I think the risk of corporate manslaughter is a very big driver for some very big corporate organisations.
Absolutely, the costs are getting quite expensive now from what I've seen in the press. So, I mean, in terms of failure rates, so what kind of failure rates would you say are kind of average across the board? Yeah,
so it does vary with the weather conditions and the external conditions, and these are just some estimates for everyone out there to get an idea and a feel. But what I would suggest is that failure rates are between 6 and 7% in the winter months, and that does tend to rise up to about 10% in the summer months. That does also get varied slightly. If we do see an outbreak, we do see a lot more samples being taken from systems which may not be monitored as frequently, so we've got a higher chance of having a positive as well.
Okay, brilliant. And then in terms of the actual taking of the samples themselves, is there any advice that you could give people potentially that could help them with making their decision of what
Certainly.
to do?
So I would always recommend using an experienced professional company. ProEconomy are very good at this as an example. No plug intended. But there are an awful lot out there of people that can take these samples that have got the right accreditation and the right competence assessments in place. If you are going to take these samples yourselves, I would thoroughly recommend that you've got the right training in place, that you're competent and signed off by someone who's able to sign you off as competent. The Water Management Society runs some very good city and guilds courses. There are other trainers out there, so you can get some good training involved, but that's critical.
Absolutely. I must say that, the Water Management Society arranged our City and Guilds accredited sampling course for our samplers very recently, in fact.
Okay.
So, we do believe it to be very important that the understanding of techniques is key. So, I mean, if someone were to be looking for a lab, I mean, what should they be looking for, accreditation-wise, from you guys? Yeah,
so I would always suggest that you look for their UKAS accreditation first and foremost. So every laboratory will have a unique number that refers to their accreditation number. You can refer to this on the UKAS website, which is www.ukas.com. There's a couple of clicks there, and you can find to search for a company's number or a company's name. You can also search for accredited companies for tests on there as well. Mm-hmm. So if you wanted to find an accredited laboratory for Legionella testing, if you just type Legionella in their search bar, it will bring you up the list. I think it's about 35 long at the moment.
Oh, wow.
So there's a big selection out there. Other key things to be looking for is someone that's possibly members of the Legionella Control Association. Being a committee member, it's an independent body, but I would strongly suggest that anyone that you're using is a member of the LCA. I do believe that the aim of the group is to raise standards, and it's something that we should be doing. And don't be afraid to question the laboratory. Do they understand the latest regs, the latest methods? Do they know the update to ISO 11731 has come out? which method are they working towards? Are they working to the 2012 method or the 2017 method? That's an important question, and there was a lot of talks about that at recent Water Management Society conferences as well.
Brilliant. Okay, fantastic. So I think that's probably quite a good introduction to the sampling, what people should be looking for and what's out there for people. But I'm sure if anyone were to want to get in contact with you for more questions, they'd be able to do so via LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn's an ideal platform, or you can email me directly.
Okay, fantastic. What's your email address?
It's nick.barsby, BARSBY, at Adey, which is ADEY.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming in for the ProEconomy podcast. Thanks, Nick.
Sonia. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.